Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from Speech Kids, where we teach little kids to talk and help parents understand their little kids through speech therapy and parent coaching. And today I'm delighted to have Rebecca Correll from the Language and Behavior Center with me. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead and just tell the good people a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder co-founder and CEO of the Language and Behavior Center. I'm also a PhD student in applied developmental psychology and a mom. So they all kind of go hand in hand. But what the Language and Behavior Center does is we primarily provide applied behavior analysis or ABA services for kids in DC, Maryland area. And yeah, that's pretty much what we do.
Just for the folks who don't know what ABA or applied behavioral analysis is, give us a quick sketch, and then we'll go into some more depth.
Yeah, it's to put it simply, it's really the science of behavior is what behavior analysis is. But applied behavior analysis or ABA is an individualized therapy approach, and it promotes learning for kids that need some extra support. Sometimes that's kids with autism, sometimes that's kids that have oppositional defiant disorder, or just really other areas of need that we can support them with.
And so ABA is one of the major treatments for autism at this time. It's reimbursed by insurance in most cases. It's evidence-based. But we were talking earlier, and there are some caveats involved there, and we're going to get into why that is. But you found something really interesting during your informal poll of many behavior BCBA.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. I mean, my whole career really since the early 2000s has been spent in behavior analysis. And it's been a really interesting path for me because I started just part-time in ABA as a therapist while I was an undergrad for business. So that was a really interesting place to start. And then I went on to get my master's in specifically applied behavior analysis. But then what I recognized when I entered my PhD in applied developmental psychology is that there was this whole area of psychology and of development that I had never studied. And it was this really big space. So I started to talk to other behavior analysts to say, was this just a one-off that, because I had my undergrad in business, I missed this?
Or you were sick that day?
Right. Hey, did I just miss that class? And what I found is it's not a requirement to have any kind of developmental content in this ABA coursework, which is extremely disappointing. I think the ethical behavior analysts, we seek this out on our own, and we talk to psychologists, we collaborate with other professionals, we go back to school to gather information that we missed, we do continuing education. I mean, the information is out there, but it's not required as a foundation to become a behavior analyst, which is ludicrous because we're working with kids.
It's super interesting. And so this brings us squarely into like this whole developmental piece of things, which is, when we're dealing with kids, particularly when we're dealing with kids with challenges, we've got lots of behavior that we want to deal with and that we want to change. And if you know enough about behavior, you can't actually change behavior directly. You have to work on either side of that equation, either front loading, making some changes before the behavior occurs or after the behavior occurs. Right.
You got it. You know it.
Well, in our Raising Orchids class, we spend actually parts of three classes on behavior and the ABCs of behavior, the antecedents, the behavior, and the consequence. And parents, their minds are blown when we say, your child is the only person who's in charge of their behavior.
Right.
Literally, they're the only ones. You cannot do anything about it.
It's a very frustrating place for perfectionist, type A, control parents like myself that study behavior and recognize, we have children that are actually the most stubborn to kind of teach us how little we can change about their behavior.
And that's so interesting too, right? Because typically developing kids, they have many different ways of solving that problem. And so, you know, right, if you try to get in, they'll go through the back door.
Absolutely.
So we've got these behaviors that are very challenging. We know we have to sort of change the environment, change what we're doing on the back end, but all of that is layered sort of enmeshed really with developmental things that are happening. And so, you know, as a speech pathologist, part of what we had to study was child language development, which of course includes a little bit of play and not so very much motor, but it should. But you're really digging deep in this in your program now.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at all of the different, you know, the ages, the early childhood, adolescence, all of that, and specific milestones that occur throughout the lifespan. And I think an area that's really important for parents and behavior analysts to consider that can often get missed is sometimes tantrums and like problem behaviors are totally developmentally normal and really good things. I mean, it's really normal for kids to push back against the boundaries. And it's really normal for them to question, why do I have to do it your way and not do it my way? And I think that as parents, sometimes we forget that and we just see that as, oh, this is a behavior, we have to, you know, apply a consequence. Or, you know, as behavior analysts, oh, this is a behavior, we better write a goal for it. We better have the short-term goal and an intervention right away, when really, if you just wait it out, you know, the kid kind of adjusts to their environment and figures it out on their own.
There's a great series of books. I don't know if you know these books, Your 1-Year-Old, Your 2-Year-Old, through the Giselle Institute, which is a child development institute in Pennsylvania. The books were written in the 80s. So they assume mom stays home, dad goes to work. Okay. Besides the sort of cultural backdrop, they studied thousands of kids. And there are these lovely short little books on developmental norms and milestones. And so you can read about all the things that, you know, your 24 to 30-month-old should be doing. The thing I love about these books, and to your point about tantrums, the whole thing is predicated, all of their sort of developmental information is predicated on this notion of a spiral, and that there are periods of stability in development when skills are being solidified, you know, sort of absorbed fully. And then there are these periods of instability where new skills are being rapidly acquired, where old ways of doing things are falling by the wayside, where children are feeling 3.5 is a particularly challenging and interesting period of time, right? Where kids are like, oh, I'm my own person. And oh, the world doesn't stop when I go to bed, right? This is like a big deal for these guys. And so everybody talks about three-nagers, right? Terrible twos, nothing, three-nagers. But it's this notion that every 6 months or so, you're going to be entering into this period of stability versus instability. And I'm wondering, you're like, you know, doing all this coursework now, have you come across something like that?
We've talked a lot about pruning of the brain, you know, like as you're entering different stages of your life and your brain's kind of figuring out what you need, what you don't need. And I feel like it's probably pretty tied to that. I'm familiar with the Wonder Years, which I don't think has a massive amount of evidence behind it. Have you read through the Wonder Years at all? Are you familiar?
I haven't, no.
It's a really interesting book. I don't know the research behind it, so I don't want to promote it, but it talks about different developmental leaps that kids make, which sounds very similar to what you're talking about, and how when they're making these leaps, they might be a little bit fussier, a little bit crankier, because they're really kind of sorting out all this new developmental information that's coming in.
And so the thing I love about these books, and actually development in general, once you know some developmental milestones, which again is another piece of what we talk about in this Raising Orchids class that we teach, is you can telescope out a little bit and you can say to yourself, for example, oh, my child is 3.5. It's expected that they will fall apart every 5 minutes. And
Yeah,
then you don't have to write a goal for it.
exactly. And that's something we talk about in ABA too, is that this term behavior, like a kid's having a behavior, has this negative connotation to it of, oh, it's a behavior problem. But it doesn't, like, if you just think of that term behavior as more neutral of, oh, he's having a behavior. When he's eating, that's a behavior. When he's running around at the playground, that's a behavior. And so if you can kind of remove the negative connotation of a behavior, it can feel just a lot more manageable as a parent of, oh, my kid's having a tantrum. That's a behavior. It's just one of the behaviors in his repertoire. It's not defining who he is as a kid. He's not a tantrumy kid. He's not a bad kid. He's just having this one behavior.
Yeah.
And I think it helps our perspective as parents to help us kind of ride out that storm and let them express whatever it is they need to express.
Yeah. The interesting thing about, and I'm not trying to pile on ABA, because it certainly has served me well in my practice, sort of these principles of learning, which is, errorless teaching is one of them, right? And I got a puppy recently. I'm using lots of behavioral principles with the puppy, but not allowing someone to make a mistake is the best way to prevent them from making future mistakes. And when I say mistakes, desirable outcomes. So like learning how to put on your shirt, for example. Right. There's a good way to do that. And we can teach that right away. Oh, you know what the other one is? Walking toddlers who want to climb up the stairs. The first thing you need to do right as soon as they do that is
teach them how to go down.
Teach them how to go down. And guess how you do it? You literally put their bodies, you put them on their belly, you take their legs and you move their legs physically down the stairs until they get that, right?
Absolutely.
That's ABA.
Right. And that's something too, that it's been so interesting to be in both of these worlds, because in ABA, it's errorless teaching. In developmental psychology, it's autonomy support, right? Like so I think it's because in ABA, when we just think of it as errorless, it's like immediate prompting and they can't make a mistake. Developmental feels a little bit safer of like, just support them as much as they need to be supported. Don't go overboard. Like, don't like pull their legs down the stairs, but just like maybe by the third time, they're kind of getting it on their own, and then ease up a little bit.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. That's so interesting. I remember there are some treatment methodologies in speech where you come in with a prompt and then you back out, and then you come in with a prompt and you back out, and you keep doing that until, gradually you fade yourself out. That's in direct opposition to a lot of ABA principles.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting is we have these, I like to call it like tools in the toolbox. And I like to think of ABA as just one of those tools. It's not the entire toolbox. And I think there's a division, honestly, in the field of ABA about that. I think there are a lot of behavior analysts that think, no, this is it. This is the end all be all. And we can teach speech, and we can teach physical milestones, and we can teach everything.
You can imagine how I feel about those people.
Right. And I mean, and it sucks for people like me that then encounter a speech therapist who has only had experience with that kind of ABA and having to undo all the damage that's been done. But I think there are more behavior analysts that are falling into this category of understanding like, hey, we're just a tool and we need to collaborate with speech therapists. Yeah. You guys are our best friends in this world.
Totally.
And physical therapists and occupational therapists, so that we can really support this child in all different areas, and that we don't need to be the saviors in ABA. We can do what we do really well, and then let everyone else do what they do really well.
Yeah. I like to talk about, toolboxes, also lenses. We've all got our lenses that we wear. That's just kind of how it is. And so if you're not talking to people who wear different lenses, you're going to miss something.
Right.
And so, yeah, collaboration is first of all, it's so much fun.
It is. And you learn so much, and you realize how much you have in common.
Yes.
I mean, like the first couple times we spoke, it was just overlapping conversation, because there's so much that overlaps in the work that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's super fun. And the outcome is really like, family and child success. And so like, who doesn't want that? We all want that.
We all win. We all win.
Oh my gosh, there's so much more to talk about. I think we're going to put a pin in it there, and we'll have to do part 2 sometime.
Yeah, there is so much to talk
I
about.
know,
Thank you
that's
so
crazy.
much.
Thank you. Take care.